Q shows up, just dumped on the bridge.
Naked.
Buck naked. In fact, so naked that he wasn't even just TV naked in order to get him suspended in that way, because he appears in the air before falling on the ground.
Right.
In order to get it to work right, he wasn't even wearing a thong. He was actually hanging dong.
Wow. Well, he's committed. That must have been interesting for the rest of the crew.
Well, I mean, it's Patrick Stewart's blocking it, so you know he got a good view of the cuteness.
You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. Eat any good books lately?
And I'm Ari, and this is getting on my nerves now that I have them.
And today we'll be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Deja Q and A Matter of Perspective. But first, we finally have them. The James Webb Space Telescope photos, the first ones rolled out this week. Have you gotten a look at them yet?
So I've seen a ton of memes. I've been very busy at work. I haven't had a chance to really pay attention to what it means or even what it is. So go ahead and tell me, please.
So if they released 4 pictures and then they had like a fifth, like they were trying to get information on an exoplanet, and it's not a spectacular photo, so they didn't release it. They just released data that they were able to glean from it. And so we got a new deep field photo. And it's one of the same places that the Hubble deep field stuff was photographed in, and so we have like a lot more detail there. So it's like a really good like 1-to-1 comparison. And we got a couple of nebulas photographed, and they're beautiful. Especially when you compare them to Hubble, you get the idea of how much of a larger resolution that we've got with this telescope. Mm-hmm. But I think
is one of the things I have seen is the side-by-side comparisons.
I think for me, the most amazing thing, though, is the photo that they didn't share. It just the details on it, because they were trying to get a read on the atmospheric composition of an exoplanet, and they were able to detect water clouds.
Oh, interesting. Water.
This telescope saw clouds on a planet 1,000 light years away.
Wow. That is impressive.
So cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Now, obviously, we're not going to be getting any like Voyager 2 style photographs of alien planets. That's can't do that. But the fact that we're able to get that kind of information from this telescope, and it's like brand new. These are just the first photographs. Looking forward to this years to come, getting some spectacular photographs. And of course, the nebulas are always the best looking ones. So
they
I
are.
look
They're
forward
so
to a
cool
lot
looking.
of those.
Yeah. Because have we seen? All I've seen is a couple of star fields, really. So I guess maybe I need to Google and see what all the pictures look like.
Yeah, there was a couple of nebulas. There was, I think there was one that was, there's a stellar nursery nebula, and then there's another one which is gas expanding from a dying star. So it's like, the birth and death.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm excited to see where that comes from. I mean, the memes have been funny too. I've enjoyed the memes. I knew they were I didn't know what the point of the telescope was. I just knew that everybody all of a sudden was like, hey, we have these back. And I'm like, man, I feel like a bad space nerd because I don't know what we're talking about.
So, it's a higher resolution telescope. It's actually about 1 million miles out from Earth, whereas Hubble is in low Earth orbit. Or I think slightly higher than low Earth orbit, but because of that, because it's far enough away from Earth, it's able to avoid light pollution from the Earth as well. It's got like a massive sun shield, so it can block out the light from the sun, and it's just orbiting a Lagrange point. But it's primarily an infrared camera, so a lot of the photos that we see, we're not actually seeing like the true color of what it is. We're seeing a spectrum of infrared translated to colors that we can see.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But we still get a lot of good information from it. I don't care if the nebula in real life doesn't look that pretty. I'm happy to see it be prettified for us.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
But it will allow us to get a lot more detail. Now, the risk of it being put out in a Lagrange point is that when Hubble first launched, do you remember its first photos were like unfocused?
Yeah, I do.
And they actually had to send the space shuttle out to repair it. We can't send astronauts 1 million miles out.
No.
So we had to make absolutely sure that this telescope was, not going to break down when we get it, but it looks
so
like
this telescope is literally farther out than any human being has ever been before?
Yeah, the farthest any human being has been is the far side of the moon.
That makes sense, yeah. I forget about that all the time. I always think, because of all the sci-fi and everything, that we've been out to, like, Jupiter and Pluto and stuff, but we haven't.
We have probes that far, sure, but yeah, no humans.
Right, but humans haven't been, yeah.
But yeah, no, so I'm looking forward to future photos. I'm sure everyone will be updating their lock screen profile photos on there. And I hope to many decades of beautiful photography to come.
Yeah, me too. My husband actually had the, not the space telescope, but he had the little, the guy that lives on Mars and takes pictures and such. I can't think of his name right now, but you know, the little robot guy that lives on Mars.
Curiosity, one of the probes.
Yeah, because they share a birthday.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, I think that's what he told me, and and it's so cute though, and you know, it sings itself happy birthday every year on its birthday. Until it died, which is a sad way to end this story. But yeah. All right. So before we talk about the episode, you know, you could join our Patreon.
That's right. Go to patreon.com/restofbothworlds. At any tier, you get access to our episodes up to 5 days early. You also get access to a spot in our Discord where you can submit ideas for these small talks that we have before the episodes. And for the $10 tier, you will get your name read out at the end of each episode. Nobody's taken that one yet, so you could be the first.
You could be the first one. All right, so today we are talking about Deja Q. It is the 13th episode of the 3rd season. It first aired on the 5th of February, 1990. It was written by Richard Danis and directed by Les Landau.
And it's our annual Q episode.
It's a Q episode. Yeah, I know. I was very excited to see it was a Q episode. I had been waiting because you could see it was coming, right? Like,
right.
Because I'm watching it on Amazon Prime or whatever. So I was like, I see Q.
So the Enterprise is trying to help a planet get its moon back in orbit because it's falling out of orbit and is going to hit the planet. And as they're considering their options, suddenly Q shows up, just dumped on the bridge.
Naked.
Buck naked. In fact, so naked that he wasn't even just TV naked in order to get him suspended in that way, because he appears in the air before falling on the ground.
Right.
In order to get it to work right, he wasn't even wearing a thong. He was actually hanging dong.
Wow. Well, he's committed. That must have been interesting for the rest of the crew.
Well, I mean, it was Patrick Stewart's blocking it, so you know he got a good view of the cuteness. Yeah, great. So he appears naked, and he says he doesn't have any powers. Nobody believes him, because why would you believe him? Right, because he's a mischievous god, and they're basically through the rest of the episode are considering, is he just like play acting here? Is he just messing with us again?
Do you know who I finally accepted it from, that he really truly was human? When Guinan accepted him as human, and being pathetic and weak or whatever. I was like, oh, okay, so he really is human, because I felt like Guinan would know. You know,
I also love that Guinan stabbed him in the hand with a fork.
That was so good. I know. And that was barely anything, because they're mortal enemies or whatever. But I remember when it cut to the scene and they're sitting in 10 forward, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
But anyway, Q says that he's been kicked out of the continuum and stripped of his powers, and he only had a minute to decide what he was going to live as once they dumped him into the mortal realm. So he picked human, and they sent him to the Enterprise because he said that of everyone in the universe, Picard's the closest thing he has to a friend. And
because he's a Picard stan.
God being, that's kind of pathetic, man.
But that's it's cute. They're sad. Cute. When we meet the second Q guy, the one from LA Law at the end of the episode, to me, it seems so obvious why they have no friends. They're all so terrible. He was a terrible, terrible, awful jerk too.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the best interactions in the episode, I use it in the intro joke, is when Q is like, what must I do to convince you people that I'm mortal? And Worf goes, die. Die. I know, with his big, deep voice. Here's the obvious solution, bud. And of course, Q's response, oh, ha ha, Worf. Eat any good books lately? Yeah.
I think between Q and Worf is some of the best banter. I love it. Now, I do take offense to Q stealing Michelle Tanner's "How rude" line. I mean, it was even the same time period. I was like, okay, come on. Like, yeah, I think it started in 88. So I think she was definitely saying "how rude" on the show by this point. Rude. Yeah, exactly. And she even kind of said it in the same tone. And I was like, is this on purpose? This shouldn't be on purpose. I hope it's not on purpose. But yes, he was like, "How rude." And I was like, oh, no. But anyway.
At first, they just throw him in the brig because they're like, look, if you're going to pretend to be human, we're going to play along. Well, we don't want to have to deal with you, so we'll just shove you in there. But then he's just like, well, I mean, I may be mortal, but I've still got my intellect. And it sounds like you guys are dealing with a problem with the moon falling out of the sky. And they're like, oh, yeah, as if you don't know. He's like, I don't care about a moon. But, I mean, if I can prove it to you, like, I didn't do anything to the moon. I'm just here. Let me help. So they assign Data to him, which is, they have an interesting conversation because Data notes that he has been aspiring to be human for his entire life. And here, Q gets it as a punishment. And Data's noting the irony there.
But I thought that was funny. And I also think it's a difference in how people view things. One man's trash is another man's treasure kind of thing, because it was like what Data values is being respected as another human member of the team or whatever, and not always constantly put down for being an android. And then Q's over here like given the chance to be anything, and he chooses human and then sees it as a punishment. I was like, yeah, this really is like life is so hard for me, but it's harder for other people, but I don't care to look, is how it felt to me, because like Data's been trying his whole life to be human. And then the way he's just like, oh, this is so stupid. And then I did like the part, though, where Q is like, I'm a Klingon at heart, one Klingon to another, when he's talking to Worf, trying to get Worf to like not put him in the brig, I think. Like,
it was also funny, too, because that whole scene, like, Q is trailing behind Worf, like basically trying to convince him, and I'm like, Worf's escorting him to the brig.
I know, he could just stop, he could walk slower, like,
yeah, like shouldn't he just like have Q by the arm the entire time? The way that security behaves in Star Trek, it never makes sense. Like they'll like, come up like, oh, come on, let's go, but they won't like grab anybody. It's like, have you never arrested someone before? You typically gotta grab them and then like handcuff them and push them where you're taking them.
I guess now that he's human, they just expected him to be compliant, because that's what us humans are known for, being compliant.
Yeah. And it would be one thing if it was like, he's like, oh, fine, I'll go to the brig and deal with it. But like, as soon as they turn on the thing, he's like, oh, this isn't fair. This isn't where I should go. I'm claustrophobic. What are you doing to me? So anyway, once he's let out, they're looking at ways of moving the moon, and Q's like, well, it's easy. You just change the gravitational constant of the universe.
Right.
Because it's something as a Q he could just easily do. They're like, okay, well, we can't do that. But it does actually give Geordi an idea, because he's like, well, if we extend the warp field around the moon, because it's a small moon, it's like an asteroid, that might actually reduce its mass, and it would make it easier for us to tractor it back into position. So, hey, thanks, Q. You actually did do something there.
And then he throws his back out in what Beverly diagnoses in a very doctorly term as classic back trauma.
She shows up and is so enjoying the fact that he's in pain. Like, I know. She's just like, like, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm gonna treat you, but like, it's the worst bedside manner she's ever had. And Q like notes it, and I'm just like, yeah, but you deserve it, Q. Remember that time that you like killed Wesley before bringing him back? I'm pretty sure she does.
I'm pretty sure she does. Yeah. Now I do love the part when they're in 10 forward, and he's like, oh, my stomach is hurting, and Wesley's like, oh, you need to eat or whatever.
Data
and then
was like that.
Data, yeah, sorry, not Wesley. And then he's like, well, when Counselor Troy is unhappy, she usually eats something chocolate.
And so he's like, all right, I'll have 10 chocolate
Sundays.
10. I'm in a very bad mood.
I've never seen someone eat 10 chocolate sundaes, but if anybody could, I bet it would be Q.
And then like after he has his confrontation with Guinan, then like they have the two waiters bringing out the trays of chocolate sundaes, and he's like, "I'm not hungry anymore." I'm like, "No, no, they made them for you. You eat those."
I want to watch him eat them, and I'm pretty sure the replicator made them, but I still want to watch him eat 10 ice cream sundaes. There was a good reference to 10 Forward because they asked where they were being attacked or whatever, because the Wisties from the other episode were reused again in this episode, and they were like, "Where are they being attacked?" And Morse like, "From deck 10 forward." And I was like, "Oh, 10 forward, got it."
That's why
remember
it's called
how
10
I
forward.
asked? Yeah.
Yeah, so those Wisties, the Calamarain, they are a gaseous species that apparently Q had been bothering before, and they get wind that Q is now mortal, and they're here for revenge. And like,
And how'd they figure that out so fast, though? They were just like, "Oh, he's mortal. Here we are."
I kind of wonder if maybe one of the other Q didn't like let them
Tell
know,
them.
maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And like you would think at any point it's like, okay, well, Q's not an ally of the Enterprise. He's caused you nothing but problems. Just give him to them. I'm sure whatever he did to them,
Picard
he
is too
deserves.
much of a softie.
And Q even points that out. Q is just like, you humans are so willing to forgive people who show the slightest remorse, no matter what they've done. And Picard's like, yeah, that's not a weakness. That's one of our strengths.
Right.
And so, but this is causing problems because, like, when they're trying to move the moon, as they do it, they have to drop shields, and when they drop shields, the Calamarain attack, and then they can't. Then they don't manage to get the moon back into place. They've only bought themselves like another orbit before it crashes in.
Right.
And Q realizes, obviously, he's like, okay, I'm the problem here. So he goes and steals a shuttlecraft and like locks out the ship controls so nobody can go like beam him back or tractor the shuttle.
Which we've seen before. I'm the problem, so I'm going to put myself in a shuttle, which I think it was that boy. Remember the boy who put himself on a shuttle? I was like, wow, this feels like a reused story idea, but okay.
I'm pretty sure they reused the shot of the shuttle leaving the bay and like I was like, I recognize that, except the shuttle's going the other way, so I think they mirrored the shot, but I'm pretty sure it was that exact same effect. So once he goes out there and then the Calamarain come after him, well, another Q shows up in his shuttle and is just like, "Oh, hey, how's it going, Q? Oh, hey, Q, how's it going?" I love that they just call each other Q and like they just know who they're talking about. It's
and
like
that guy acts like he just met Willem Dafoe, right? Because that's who we were talking about, right? He just met Willem Dafoe and was like, "I want to emulate that guy." And I know him from LA Law because I watched LA Law with my mother growing up. And so I was like, hey, it's that dude from LA Law. But I looked him up on IMDb to make sure I was right. And he's been in a ton of stuff in the 90s. So like at that point, he was either about to get really famous or he already was. And yet he chose to play a Willem Dafoe knockoff character on Star Trek. And we all know, when did Willem Dafoe get famous? I feel like he would have been famous by that point, right?
I think wasn't his claim to fame the Last Temptation of Christ? Like, wasn't that where he like his first
I've
big
never
thing?
seen that. But does he play Satan? Because I don't like him.
No, I'm pretty sure he plays Jesus.
Oh.
I'm looking it up. I've never seen it. That was in '88. So yeah, Willem Dafoe was known by that.
Okay. He was known by then, yeah. That's at first I was trying to place what actor I thought it was like, and you said Willem Dafoe, and I was like, oh, it is Willem Dafoe, especially because we were just watching because it's 2022, Too Many Spider-Man, right? And so he's been on my radar lately again because I keep thinking about him because he does such a good job at playing Green Goblin. You know, and so he was on my mind, and then you said it, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
All Q needed to say to Q was, "We're not so different, you and I."
That would have been great.
But he does note that because Q is going and like making the sacrifice play, he's like, "Oh, maybe you have learned your lesson. Okay, that's it. We'll go ahead and give you your powers back." And of course, the first thing Q does with the powers is like shrink the Calamarain down to the size that can fit in his hand, and he's like threatening them, and then the other Q's like, "Hey, dude, we just gave you your powers back." He's like, "Oh, I was just playing with him," and he just blows him away. He's like, No, nothing.
And then he shows up with an entire mariachi band on the.
Great moment, such a good moment. Like
it's
that,
so good.
Oh, and we even missed earlier, like, that's a good meme, but, like, the meme comes from this episode.
It does. The one where he's holding his head in his hand. Yes. Yes. I know I paused it and rewound it and got a picture because I was like, it's the meme. But I've seen the mariachi one too. Yeah. I've seen the mariachi one, but I don't remember what the people use it for memeing. Like when I saw it, I was like, I've seen it.
Because that's what he's doing. He's got his powers back, so he brings the mariachi bands to the bridge and is blowing on his trumpet, and nobody else is amused. And
then when Picard's finally like, okay, stop this, he snaps his fingers and he's in his red leotard. No, that's not what it's called. Jumpsuit. And he's like, Picard looks him up and looks him down, and he looks at him like he cannot believe that this man is wearing a Star Trek uniform. I'm like, this is not the first time, buddy. But I mean, I think the reason that the Q episodes work so well is really the Jean-Luc and Q like play off of each other so well. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it work. It's kind of like Star-Lord and Thor. They kind of they're not good together for long periods of time, but I love them together for short periods of time.
They have good banter with each other. They play off each other well. They're like I wouldn't want to watch an entire Asgardians of the Galaxy movie like where they're together the whole time, because Thor would throw off the Guardians and the Guardians would throw off Thor, right? I mean, we just saw Thor 4 together, and I would have liked a little bit more of the Guardians in that movie, to be honest.
I agree. They were underutilized. I wanted it to be more, but I think an entire movie would have. I knew they would go away eventually because an entire movie would be weird to have an entire Guardians movie. Okay, so are we ready to talk about the end though?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the episode, because I was just gonna say, most of the interaction in the episode is between Q and Data, and which is interesting.
I thought they were good together too,
because Data has the perspective of someone aspiring to be human, and Q has the perspective of someone who is only freshly human.
Right.
And at the end, because Data was the one basically advocating for Q, saying, you know what, Q might actually have some good ideas here, and I think he might be turning a new leaf. Q decides to give him a gift, and Data immediately is like, do not turn me human. I don't want a shortcut to this. And he's like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. But he does let him laugh.
And so does he tell him a joke? Or because he whispers something in his ear, right?
I don't think he tells him a joke. I think he just
It was a very lost in translation moment where I was like, what did he say?
No, I think it was just because Data doesn't even know why he's laughing. I just felt like it.
But this was like the culmination of several episodes where we've seen him try to laugh, and it's been so creepy and terrible. That's what I thought was so cool about it, is they gave him the thing he had been working for. Mm-hmm. I thought it was so cool.
It was cute. And then they get hailed by the planet. They're like, hey, thanks, whatever you did. The moon's back in its orbit. And they're like, oh, we didn't do anything.
Thanks, Q. I wonder, so do you know that, I don't know, I haven't read the books, but I hear that in the Star Wars books, that's how Chewie dies. The moon of Endor gets thrown at him and he dies, I think.
All I knew about Chewie dying in the books, obviously this is before the Disney canon, is that he died to save Han and Leia's kids. That's what I had heard. But beyond that, I don't know how he died. I just know that he did.
All I knew was that he had been crushed by a falling moon or planet or something. And I was like, interesting. And then when I was watching this episode, I was like, oh, it's like Chewie. There are a couple good moments in this episode, like when Q tried to insult Worf by calling him a Romulan. Yes. Which I really liked. I thought that was funny.
And I was surprised with Worf's restraint at that point, because Worf's just like, nope, just gonna keep walking.
He did stop. He thought about it, because you could, it would be like if it was a cartoon, he would have clenched his hands and but he stopped and then he just kept walking.
Yeah.
And then Q and I have something in common. We don't often have something in common, but I too hate working in groups because I'm omnipotent. Okay. Not because I'm omnipotent, but I hate having to do all the work. But I laughed at that line because I also hate group work. I get it. I feel you. For once, I really wanted Deanna to be front and center, telling us everything we already knew, and she wasn't. It feels like they pack her away on some of the episodes where she'd be the most interesting.
She did comment that she was when
the
Q
fear
shows up,
or whatever.
Yeah. That he's like, I don't know, he might be telling the truth. I do sense something different from him than I usually do. So, but that's about all she contributes, and Yeah.
I know. I was, in this case, since he really was truly human, I was kind of hoping for like maybe a little bit more of her using her powers on him, you know, since she could and he wouldn't be able to stop her because he's just human, right?
Yeah.
We almost missed my favorite line. You weren't like that before the beard.
Yes.
I thought that was such a good line, especially because they, you know, because of the trope, you know, growing the beard and everything. It was almost like they were acknowledging that. Mm-hmm. It's because Q tries to like conjure up some ladies for Riker.
I don't need your fantasy women.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, oh, you weren't like that before the beard. Made me laugh so much. I was like, yeah, that's right. You weren't like that before the beard.
That actually, just conjuring up fantasy women, I actually just made a tweet. People making jokes about in Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, where Reed Richards just tells Wanda what Black Bolt's powers are so that she can stop them. And I made a tweet that said, Reed Richards, if he were a good wingman, it's over, Wanda. Black Bolt can easily kill you with his lack of bitches.
What? So, we don't need to talk about Multiverse of Madness. I've still got some issues with why some things happened in that, because I'm still kind of irritated about the way that they just had Wanda come in and smash up all those people, but it's that's for another time. I think we're ready to move on to the next episode, which I'm just going to tell everyone right now was the most boring episode of Star Trek I have ever seen. So the one we're talking about today is called A Matter of Perspective. It is the 14th episode of the 3rd season. It first aired on the 12th February 1990, written by Ed Zuckerman and directed by Cliff Bole.
This is the Rashomon episode, which when I mentioned it to you, you're like, oh, like The Last Jedi.
Uh-huh. That's where I learned that term, yeah.
I'm sure that won't make anyone mad.
No, I'm sure that Rian Johnson, being a director that knows classic film and then inserting it into a Star Wars movie that everybody hates because it's too woke, won't piss anybody off. Yeah.
Anyway, so Riker and Geordi had been visiting a space station where some scientist is working on some new energy source. And when they beam back over, the space station explodes.
Right.
And there was only one person aboard the space station when it exploded, the scientist who was working on this thing. But then suddenly a detective from the planet beams up, is like, all right, it's time, we're going to arrest Riker for the murder. And they're like, well, hang on, what do you mean? And they're like, nope, we've got witness testimony, he's the one who did it. And so Picard's just like, look, yes, we are subjects to your laws while we're in your system. However, it is the captain's prerogative whether extradition is warranted. So we're going to hear things out here on the ship first before we just let you take him to your guilty before proven innocent.
Right, they made that perfectly clear, because he's like, in our system of judgment, justice, we are innocent until proven guilty. And he's like, in our system of justice, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Their system of justice also allows hearsay, which I was just like, you got a lot of innocent people in prison, my dude.
Seriously, so do we, though.
That's true.
So that's one of my few takeaways from this episode, is that I think I might have said this before, but that the Federation is lawful good because they follow the rules of whatever law of the society that they're in. Unless they just decide that day that they're not going to because it serves the plot. Yeah.
Yeah. Picard was like, okay, well, we'll follow the rules. It's like, oh, but I don't like that rule. And I'm going to break the Prime Directive to break that rule. You know, it happens probably about once or twice a season. Yeah. So this episode and the previous episode both started with naked people. And that's all they have in common. I don't know. Right, because it starts, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, Picard is doing some painting, and that's actually a really funny scene too, because like Data is going in, and yeah, because there's like, they have a nude model that everyone's painting, and Data is like praising the different styles of all the painting students. Then he looks at Picard's, And the way he describes it as like a mishmash of conflicting styles, and it's just like
haphazard melange. It's the only words I wrote down. Haphazard melange.
And it's obvious that Data isn't meaning to be insulting. He was just like, it's just Picard is so bad at painting that like it's just tripping up Data's circuits, and he's like pattern recognizing where it isn't there, and Picard's just really bad at it. And you can tell that Picard's just like, all right, shut up, Data. I know I'm not good at painting.
Let's go. Yeah. It was a good opening. It's nice to see, Picard do like, R&R type stuff like painting, because, we usually just see him drinking tea and being on the bridge, and playing Dixon Hill. But I don't know. Then that's where the episode just lost my interest. I don't know. It really felt like they were trying to do something fancier than Star Trek. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. I don't know how to describe it other than that. I just didn't like it.
Well, and it sounds like I was reading a lot of like the background stuff, and it was the final writer of it was Ed Zuckerman, but it was a group effort, and I think Ronald Moore did a lot of initial work on it, and he said that they had like a really tight script for it, and it was like a really good murder mystery, but like the direction just made it completely fall flat. Yeah,
well, that actually, the way you just described that is how I would describe the episode if I had any like desire to explain it in a better way, because that's exactly what it is. It felt like they had something there. They were like, we're gonna do this like classical style of movie or whatever, and we're going to show you 3 different perspectives and then show you what really happened. But instead, it just kind of fell apart like it was being done by people who had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah. And, so what they accuse him of is that the scientist's wife was like, Riker says that she was coming on to him, and that's what caused the conflict. And she said that he tried to rape her, and that's what caused the conflict. And then, like,
so that led to a very uncomfortable scene we all had to watch, where Riker was not understanding cues of not pushing women without consent. And I was like, why am I having to watch this?
It was a holographic Riker, and it was from her testimony.
Yeah.
And, like, it seems like she was trying to... I don't believe in any universe that Riker is a rapist, so I don't either. It just was so uncomfortable. Yeah. I think she was just trying to sell it so that... because I think she was convinced that Riker had killed
her husband. Yeah.
And I think she just fabricated those elements to make it more damning against him. That happens sense. All the time in like court cases and stuff like that. You want to upsell your side.
Speaking of which, did you find out, this is totally aside, but did you hear that they found the original arrest warrant for the woman that accused Emmett Till?
Really?
Did you hear about this?
No.
And so now people are calling for her to be arrested, and she's like she's out there trying to save face, and they say things like, I never want him murdered, but murder doesn't have a statute of limitations, right?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So, and she's still alive and he is not. So that's all I've heard. I've been so busy this week, but it just reminded me of that. And I just thought, wow, it would be interesting to see her arrested after all these years, because her false testimony is what got him murdered,
Yeah. That would be interesting.
So anyway, that just made me think of it because we were talking about false testimonies.
Yeah. And, like, I also like how every single version of the doctor walking in on Riker and his wife, in each version, somebody else gets their ass kicked.
Oh, I hadn't really picked up on that.
Because in the first one, in Riker's testimony, he swings at both of them and hits his wife, but like Riker dodges. And then in the wife's testimony, when the doctor comes in to like confront them, Riker kicks his ass. And then in the third testimony, which is from the assistant who is relaying hearsay information about what the doctor told her about how it happened, he shows up and kicks Riker's ass. So it's really funny just seeing different. And I'm like, well, I think if you asked Dr. Crusher, you could probably tell, okay, well, these punches happened like 24 hours ago. So I'm sure I could find evidence of trauma if there was any.
Classic back trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point, because they all, I had not caught that, but that would be, you'd be able to find the one with the actually punched face, right? And that would be the correct one. I also thought it was interesting because Data was like, this is accurate to like a very minimal 8.36%. And I was like, that's a big, that's a huge margin of error for somebody potentially going to jail or being put to death for the rest of their life. Data.
I think the sets were all accurate. Like they had recreated the space station in the holodeck down to every detail, and that actually ends up being what exonerates Riker, because they start noticing at precise interval, like every 5 hours, 20 minutes, and 13 seconds, there is a streak of radiation that hits the ship and starts like melting through some random part of the ship. And they realize that it's actually the energy that the Doctor had been working on, because there is like a base station on the planet that was transmitting it up to the station. And because they recreated the station, and because the way that the energy interacts is basically just bouncing off of like a set of mirrors, the recreation of the station was interacting with that signal in the same way and sending out the radiation. And so while the accusation was that as Riker was being beamed out, he fired his phaser at the reactor, they actually are able to reconstruct using the actual energy from the base station interacting with the thing, showing that Riker, as he beams out, was going to be hit by that energy by the Doctor. The Doctor tried to kill him.
Right, yeah, and that's how they figured out that he was the one that was trying to kill him.
But the transporter beam reflected back into the reactor, and so he just ended up killing himself.
That's what you get for trying to murder somebody, I guess, you know? I didn't really have a lot of, like, sympathy towards him being dead since, you know, he had tried to be the murderer in the first place.
Interestingly, this plotline, though, of, you know, visiting a scientist who's like obsessed with his work and like a neglected wife, that there's a question of infidelity with the character, that they reuse that plot line in an episode of Voyager, where it's Tom Paris who's accused of murder.
Maybe that's why this episode felt so familiar.
Right.
As the whole time I was watching it, it's like, not only is it super boring, but why does it feel familiar? And I was like, well, because then we were texting and you said the thing about the Rashomon or whatever. And I was like, okay, so maybe it's just that. Maybe I'm just getting like weird deja vu feelings because of that, you know? But now that you're saying that they reused this plot into Voyager, and we all know I sat and watched Voyager, but don't remember a look of it, that might be why, is because of that. But I just... Did you like this episode? Like, is it one that you would go watch on your own if you're like, I'm going to watch an episode of Star Trek?
No, it would not jump out at me, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think Ronald Moore said it was like the worst episode of season 3.
Oh, well, so far I think I'd probably agree with that. I'd have to go back and look, but it just felt so dry and boring. It felt like I was watching something that used to be on TV like 45 years ago, you know, that wasn't interesting at all. I don't know. I didn't like it. I was mad when Troy called him Will, though, because she calls him Bill.
No, she doesn't. Not anymore. You have to let Bill die. It's not coming back. Stop trying to make fetch happen.
I'm gonna make Bill happen. I'm gonna start petitioning to get her to call him Bill in the newest in the Picard episodes.
Oh well, they've already filmed those, so
dang it!
you better hope. I mean, they could still ADR it, but I don't know. It should probably. I'll find out. You should probably just bug. I think it's Terry Matalas is the showrunner for Picard. Let me double check.
Well, and I'm good friends with that person, so I can just call them up.
Oh, I'm sure.
Tell them that I think this is what they should do. And I did what Amanda told me. I think of shaving cream every single time I think of her calling him Bill now, but that doesn't help me.
It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I really have anything else to add to this one other than I disliked it. There's not very many. I mean, I at least usually get a page of notes, either making fun of things or noting little things. This one has 4 lines of notes on the page. Like, there was nothing I had to say about it. It was just there. It existed. It was an episode.
I have very few notes on this one myself. I was just looking. Usually I can scroll down, but I take my notes on my phone, and they're all there on the single screen of my phone.
Yeah. I mean, like the Q one had 4 pages of notes, for example. This one had half a page of notes. But yeah, I don't know. I hope the next ones are better. We are out of the weird naming scheme, though. There was like 10 episodes in a row that started with the. And these 2 were finally, because it's Deja Q and A Matter of Perspective, we're finally out of the pattern that was really bothering me, because like 10 episodes in a row were all the, and I was like, okay, get over it, guys. So thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at RestBothWorlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.